The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the chill of the cursed forest that had become Lyra's home. She moved carefully, feet barely touching the damp earth, as though the ground itself might betray her. The villagers called her weak, a failure of the Omega line. They said she could not shift, that her powers were nothing. The words had burned into her like a brand, and she had learned to live in the shadow of shame. Lyra paused at a clearing, staring at the mist swirling around an ancient stone altar. It was said to be a place where the spirits of powerful shapeshifters lingered, a place of judgment for those who dared to dream beyond their abilities. She knelt and touched the cold surface, whispering a prayer she had long stopped believing in. "Please, let me be more than what they say I am," she murmured, her voice lost in the wind. Life had never been kind to her. Born an Omega in a kingdom ruled by strength, she had always been weaker than the others, unable to shift fully when her peers demonstrated their abilities with ease. Each failed attempt had been met with ridicule, each mistake a public reminder of her inadequacy. Even her own family had recoiled from her, ashamed of what she could not become. And yet, beneath the layers of fear and shame, a small ember of hope remained. She dreamed of proving herself, of showing that even a weak Omega could hold power worth respecting. But dreams alone could not change the whispers of the kingdom or the cruel judgments of the world outside the forest. Lyra's solitude was interrupted by a sudden sound, a soft, rustling, too deliberate to be the wind. Her heart raced as she turned, half expecting a wolf or some shadowy creature that haunted the forest's edge. But what stepped into the clearing was neither animal nor ghost. He was a man, tall and commanding, his presence radiating a quiet authority that made the air itself seem to shiver. His eyes, a piercing shade of stormy gray, locked onto hers with an intensity that made her chest tighten. He wore the robes of a king, dark and elegant, adorned with symbols that hinted at both mortal rule and supernatural power. "You are Lyra," he said, his voice low and steady, carrying the weight of command. "The Omega, who could not shift." She flinched at the words, the reminder of her failures cutting deeper than any blade. I am," she stammered, unsure whether to flee or remain rooted to the spot. He stepped closer, each movement deliberate, measured. "I have heard of your weakness," he continued. "But weakness is not always what it seems. Some powers are hidden until the right moment reveals them." Lyra's lips parted in disbelief. No one had ever spoken to her like this before, and yet the words stirred something within her, a mixture of fear and a strange hope she could not name. "Who are you?" she asked, voice trembling, though she tried to steady it. "I am Ravik," he said simply, "Alpha King of this kingdom, and I have come to claim you." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Claim her? She had read stories of Alphas claiming Omegas, but always as a reward or a punishment. Never for someone like her, someone weak. Her mind reeled, and for a moment, she felt paralyzed. Why me?" she whispered. Ravik's gaze softened slightly, though the intensity did not leave his eyes. "Because I have seen the spark within you," he said. "The spark that others have missed. The spark that could change the fate of this kingdom." Lyra shook her head, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "I am nothing. I have failed. I can barely shift. I am not worthy of anything, let alone a king." "You are stronger than you know," Ravik replied, his tone firm but not unkind. "Strength is not measured by how easily one shifts or how others perceive you. It is measured by courage, by resilience, by the will to face your fears, even when the world tells you to hide." Her heart thudded wildly. There was something about him, something that both terrified and captivated her. His presence was magnetic, like the pull of the moon over the tide, and she could not look away. She began, then faltered. Her shame felt heavier than ever, threatening to crush the small courage she had gathered. "You do not need to answer now," Ravik said. "You will come with me. You will learn. You will be tested. And only then will you understand your true potential." Before she could protest, a wave of cold, raw energy surrounded him, emanating from a ring of runes etched into the earth at the clearing's edge. The symbols glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Lyra instinctively stepped back, her omega senses reacting to the surge of power. You are different," she whispered, awe creeping into her voice. "I am your king," he said simply. "And soon, you will understand why I have chosen you." The journey to the royal stronghold was swift, though Lyra felt as if time itself had slowed. She walked beside Ravik in silence, the forest around them thick with shadows and whispers. The trees seemed to lean closer, as if eager to witness what was to come. Birds and animals had long since fled, leaving only the distant moan of the wind as their companion. When the palace came into view, perched atop a hill shrouded in mist, Lyra could not hide her awe. It was enormous. Dark stone walls rising like the bones of a fallen giant. Towers reached into the sky, their spires lost in the low-hanging clouds. The air was thick with an energy that made her skin tingle, a mixture of magic and authority that seemed almost tangible. Ravik led her inside, through hallways lit by torches that cast flickering shadows on the walls. Every step echoed through the grand corridors, a reminder of the power that resided within these walls. Lyra felt small, insignificant, yet a spark of determination ignited within her. "You will sleep tonight in the Chamber of Trials," Ravik said, his voice echoing in the vast hall. "Tomorrow, your training begins. Do not be afraid, Lyra. Fear is a cage, and you are here to break free." Lyra's hands trembled as she nodded, words failing her. For the first time in her life, someone had not laughed at her, not turned away in disappointment. Instead, he had offered her a chance to prove herself, to grow beyond the shame that had bound her for so long. That night, she lay in the grand chamber, staring at the ceiling carved with images of ancient battles and legendary shapeshifters. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant howl of the wind outside. Fear and anticipation twisted inside her chest, a knot of emotions she could not untangle. Could she truly become more than what she had always been told she was? Could she find strength within herself that others had failed to see? And then, from the darkness beyond the window, a shadow moved tall, strong, and impossibly still. Ravik's presence was a promise, a warning, and a challenge all at once. Lyra felt a strange warmth, a tether to something greater than her own doubts. She did not know what the future held or what trials awaited her, but for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, she could rise beyond shame, beyond weakness, and step into a destiny that no one had dared to imagine. Outside, the wind howled, carrying with it the first whispers of change. The kingdom, the curse, and the shadows that had watched her life from afar were about to collide with her fate. And somewhere in the shadows, Ravik waited, his eyes fixed on her, knowing that the spark he had seen would soon blaze into something no one could ignore. Cliffhanger. Lyra sensed a surge of power within her, fleeting but undeniable. A small flicker of light danced along her fingertips, a sign that her hidden potential was awakening. She gasped, unsure whether to be afraid or exhilarated. The forest, the kingdom, and the Alpha King had all taken notice. The journey had begun. The next morning, the palace was alive with shadows and whispers. Sunlight barely touched the high towers, leaving the corridors in soft gloom. Lyra walked carefully behind Ravik, her hands trembling, heart pounding with every step. The walls were carved with stories of ancient battles, legendary alphas, and omegas, who had changed the kingdom's fate. Each carving reminded her that she was entering a world far beyond the simple forest she had known. Ravik led her to a room called the Chamber of Trials. It was enormous, circular, with walls of dark stone and runes etched deep into the floor. The runes pulsed faintly with a blue light, as though alive, as though waiting for someone worthy to awaken them. "You will sleep here tonight," Ravik said, his gray eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart tremble. "Tomorrow, your training begins. It will not be easy. You will face fears you did not know you had. But only by stepping through fear will you find strength." Lyra swallowed hard. She had heard of the king's harsh methods, how he tested those he claimed. Others had failed, and some never returned. Fear clawed at her. But beneath it, a small spark of determination stirred. Maybe this was the chance she had been waiting for, an opportunity to rise beyond the shame that had haunted her all her life. The first night was long and restless. Lyra lay on a thin mattress, staring at the ceiling where shadows of ancient warriors seemed to move. She tried to calm her thoughts, but every memory of her failures crowded her mind. She remembered the ridicule of her peers, the bitter disappointment of her family, and the cruel laughter of her mentor, who had told her she was unworthy of even trying to shift. And yet, beneath the shame, a stubborn hope refused to die. She remembered Ravik's words: "Strength is measured by courage, by resilience, by the will to face your fears." The next morning, she awoke to the sound of footsteps echoing through the chamber. Ravik was already waiting, standing tall and commanding, his presence filling the room. His gray eyes studied her carefully, and for a moment, Lyra felt as though he could see every thought, every doubt, every fear hidden in her heart. "Today," he said, his voice calm but firm, "you will begin your training. You will not be weak. You will not be defined by failure. You will learn to embrace what others have ignored in you." Lyra nodded, her throat tight. I will try," she said, unsure if she meant it for him or for herself. Ravik led her through the palace to a vast hall, where the training would begin. The floor was smooth stone, the walls lined with enchanted mirrors that reflected not just the body, but the soul. Every movement would be observed, every hesitation noted. "You will learn to shift," Ravik said. "Not just with your body, but with your mind and heart. The magic of your blood is stronger than you realize, but it must be awakened." Lyra tried to focus, summoning the courage to believe him. She felt the pulse of the runes beneath her feet, a rhythm that seemed to match the beat of her own heart. She closed her eyes, imagining herself transforming, imagining the power she had always been told she lacked. At first, nothing happened. Her hands remained human, her body unchanged. Doubt gnawed at her, whispering that she had always been weak, that she would always be nothing. Ravik's voice cut through the fear. "Do not listen to that voice. It is the voice of shame. You are not your failures. You are stronger than you know." Lyra opened her eyes and looked at him. His presence was steady, commanding, but there was also a softness, a rare warmth that seemed to invite trust. She tried again, summoning every ounce of will she had, and this time, a faint shimmer surrounded her form. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A flicker of light, like a whisper of wings, danced across her skin. She gasped, stepping back in surprise and awe. Ravik's gray eyes softened slightly, though his expression remained firm. "There it is," he said. "The spark I saw. It is rare, and it is powerful, but it must grow, and that growth will not be easy." Traptidio. 2. Lyra felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. For the first time, someone had not laughed at her. not turned away in disappointment. Instead, he had seen something within her, something worth nurturing. Training continued through the day. Ravik pushed her, testing her endurance, her courage, her ability to trust herself. He asked her to face illusions of her deepest fears, visions of rejection, failure, and shame. Each time, she trembled, faltered, but gradually, she began to steady herself. "You are stronger than you realize," Ravik reminded her. "Again, and you are not alone. I will guide you, but you must take the steps yourself." By midday, Lyra's body ached, and her mind was weary. Yet, a new strength stirred within her, a quiet determination that whispered she might be more than her past failures. During a break, she wandered through the palace halls, drawn to a chamber she had not seen before. Inside, the walls were lined with ancient scrolls and artifacts, glowing faintly with magic. She ran her fingers over the dusty tomes, feeling the pulse of centuries-old power. One scroll caught her attention. It spoke of Omegas, who had changed the fate of kingdoms, not by brute strength, but by courage, cunning, and heart. The stories mirrored her own desires, her longing to rise above shame. She realized that perhaps her destiny had been waiting for her all along, hidden behind the shadows of fear and doubt. When she returned to the training hall, Ravik was watching her, his eyes sharp yet unreadable. "You have found inspiration," he said, his voice low. "Good, but remember, inspiration alone is not enough. You must act. You must confront the shadows within yourself and beyond these walls." Lyra nodded, feeling both fear and resolve. She was beginning to understand the truth in his words. Strength was not just power, it was courage, heart, and the willingness to face what others would not. As evening fell, the palace seemed to shift around them. Shadows lengthened, and the air grew heavy with anticipation. Lyra felt a strange pulse of energy, faint but insistent, as if the walls themselves were alive and aware of her presence. Ravik approached her then, his expression unreadable. "Tomorrow, you will face the first true test," he said. "A test not just of your power, but of your heart. You will be forced to choose between fear and courage, doubt and trust." Lyra's stomach tightened. What kind of test?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You will see soon enough," Ravik said, his eyes searching hers. "And know this. I will not protect you from yourself, but I will stand with you, if you allow it." Her heart skipped. The offer of support, the acknowledgement that he believed in her even in the smallest way, was a strange and terrifying gift. She felt drawn to him, even as fear tugged at her. The bond between them, fragile yet undeniable, had begun to form. The night came again, dark and heavy, and Lyra lay in her chamber, staring at the ceiling carved with images of legendary shapeshifters. She thought of the day's trials, the flicker of light that had danced across her skin, and the strange pull of the Alpha King who had claimed her. Could she truly face the test ahead? Could she trust her own strength and perhaps even Ravik? Outside the chamber, the wind moaned through the towers, carrying with it the first hints of the challenges to come. Shadows moved at the edges of the palace, silent observers waiting for her to prove herself. Lyra clenched her fists, feeling the pulse of magic in her veins, fragile yet insistent. She did not know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt a spark of hope that burned brighter than shame. Cliffhanger. A sudden surge of power erupted from the training hall, shaking the walls and causing the runes on the floor to glow brighter than ever. Lyra gasped as she felt it in her own veins. A call to face something far greater than she had imagined. Ravik's voice echoed from the shadows. "The test begins, and you will either rise or fall." The first test began before dawn. Lyra awoke to the low hum of magic, vibrating through the palace halls. The chamber of trials had changed overnight. The walls glimmered faintly with silver light, and shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. Her heart thumped, both from fear and anticipation. She had never faced anything like this before. Ravik appeared silently, as he always did, his gray eyes observing her with that same mixture of authority and quiet curiosity. "Today, you face the shadows," he said. "Not the shadows of the palace, but the shadows within yourself. Only by confronting them will you find the strength you do not yet know you possess. Not them." Lyra nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She had felt the flicker of power in her veins during the previous day's training, but today felt different. Today, she would be tested, not just physically, but emotionally. She wondered if she would fail again. The chamber's doors closed behind her with a resonant clang, and the runes on the floor flared brighter. Shadows swirled around her, twisting into forms both familiar and terrifying. They took the shape of the villagers who had mocked her, the mentor who had laughed at her failures, even the animals she had feared as a child. Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to run, to escape, but Ravik's words echoed in her mind. Strength is measured by courage, by resilience, by the will to face your fears. A shadow lunged at her, sharp and menacing, and she stumbled back. Panic rose like a tide, but then she remembered the spark, the tiny light that had appeared when she first tried to shift. She focused on it, summoning the energy within her. Her hands glowed faintly, a soft, trembling light that pushed back the darkness. "You can do this," Ravik's voice came from the shadows, calm but commanding. "Do not fear yourself. Do not fear your power." Lyra inhaled deeply and stepped forward. She reached out with her mind and heart, letting the magic flow through her. The shadows recoiled at her determination, dissolving into mist. One by one, she faced them, her power growing with every step, every heartbeat. It was exhausting. Her muscles ached, her mind strained, but a strange exhilaration surged through her. For the first time, she felt that she was not weak. She was not nothing. She was someone who could stand against the darkness, both outside and inside herself. Ravik watched silently, stepping closer as she gained confidence. There was no praise in his eyes, only attention. But Lyra felt as though she had earned something far greater than words, a recognition that she had been seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. As the last shadow faded, a deep, low rumble shook the chamber. The runes on the floor glowed brighter, and a new figure emerged from the darkness. Taller, darker, with eyes that seemed to pierce straight into her soul. Lyra froze. The figure was a vision of fear, an alpha rival known throughout the kingdom for cruelty and cunning. He had come to test her, to see if she was truly worthy of Ravik's attention. "You dare to step into the king's trials?" The figure sneered, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the chamber. "Do you think an Omega like you can survive?" Lyra's hands shook, but she did not retreat. The flicker of light within her flared, responding to her fear and determination. She could feel the magic thrumming in her veins, alive and powerful, waiting to be unleashed. Ravik stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. His touch was grounding, a tether of calm and authority. "Do not be afraid of him," he said. "You are not alone. Trust yourself. Trust your power." Lyra nodded, drawing strength from his presence. The alpha rival lunged, moving with terrifying speed, but Lyra's magic flared. Light erupted from her hands, creating a shield that pushed him back. The chamber shook with the force, and for a moment, Lyra felt pure exhilaration. She was no longer the weak Omega the villagers had scorned. She was a force to be reckoned with. The rival snarled and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Lyra trembling but victorious. She looked up at Ravik, who regarded her with a mix of approval and curiosity. "You have taken your first real step," he said. "But there are greater trials ahead. The shadows you face today are only the beginning. Fear will return, and it will be stronger. But so will you." Lyra's chest swelled with a mixture of pride and apprehension. She had faced the darkness and survived, but she knew this was only the start. The palace, the king, and the magic of the kingdom had more challenges in store. Later, during a brief moment of rest, Ravik led her to a balcony overlooking the kingdom. The city below was cloaked in early morning mist, spires and towers rising like silent guardians. Lyra felt a strange mixture of awe and fear. This world, so vast and powerful, was now a part of her journey. "Do you see it?" Ravik asked, his voice soft, almost contemplative. "The kingdom is more than stone and crown. It is power, yes, but it is also fear, hope, and choices. You will influence all of it if you can embrace your strength." Lyra nodded, though words failed her. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down, but also a strange thrill of possibility. For the first time, she felt that she was not just a weak Omega, a shadow in the world, but someone who could matter. As evening fell, Ravik called her back to the Chamber of Trials. The shadows had shifted, forming a new, more intricate pattern on the floor. Lyra felt the pulse of magic stronger now, resonating with her own heartbeat. She knew this was more than training. It was a test of her heart, her courage, and her ability to trust herself. The chamber doors closed behind her, and the shadows began to swirl once more. Lyra took a deep breath and focused. She summoned the light within, letting it flow through her. The flicker became a steady glow, warm and powerful. The shadows recoiled, but did not vanish entirely. They were waiting, patient and cunning. "You are ready," Ravik's voice echoed from the darkness. "Not just to face the shadows, but to rise above them." Lyra felt her pulse quicken. There was something intoxicating about this power, this fear, this dance between light and dark. She realized that this was more than a trial, it was a transformation. And with Ravik at her side, guiding her, she felt a connection deeper than she had ever known. But just as she began to feel confident, a sudden chill swept through the chamber. The shadows deepened, twisting into shapes she had never seen before. Monstrous and beautiful, terrifying and mesmerizing. Her light flickered, and fear threatened to overwhelm her. Ravik stepped closer, his hand brushing hers in a gesture that was both grounding and intimate. Lyra felt a spark at the contact, a connection that went beyond power or training. Her pulse raced, a mixture of fear and anticipation. "Do not falter," he whispered. "I will not let the shadows claim you. But you must stand, Lyra. You must rise." Lyra's hands glowed brighter, her resolve hardening. She stepped forward, facing the darkest shadows she had ever seen, feeling the power within her respond to her courage. She realized that fear was no longer an enemy. It was a challenge, a companion that could guide her if she did not run. The shadows surged forward, and she met them head-on, light clashing against darkness in a dazzling display. She felt her strength growing, her mind clearing, and her heart opening to the possibility that she could truly be more than she had ever imagined. And then, from the corner of the chamber, a whisper reached her ears, soft, almost too faint to hear, but unmistakable. It was a voice she had never known, yet it seemed familiar, calling to her, testing her. Lyra froze. The shadows faltered for a moment, sensing the disturbance. She turned her head, heart racing. "Who's there?" she whispered. There was no answer, only the pulse of magic and the soft, steady presence of Ravik beside her. But Lyra knew that this was only the beginning. The kingdom, the shadows, and her own hidden power held secrets yet to be revealed. Cliffhanger. A sudden surge of darkness erupted from the far corner of the chamber, and Lyra felt her magic pulled toward it. She realized with a jolt that this was no ordinary test. The shadows were alive, and something far older, far darker, had noticed her awakening power. Ravik's voice rang in her ears. "Brace yourself, Lyra. The real trial begins now." The chamber trembled with a surge of darkness, the shadows twisting and writhing as though alive. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, her hands glowing with a fierce, steady light. She could feel the power coursing through her veins, responding to her courage and her fear. Yet the darkness pressed closer, stronger than any shadow she had faced before. Ravik stepped beside her, his presence grounding, a constant reminder that she was not alone. This is not only a test of power, it is a test of your heart. The shadows will challenge your fear, your doubt, even the shame you carry. Do not falter. Lyra swallowed hard, her chest tightening. The memories of every failure, every whispered insult, every fearful glance from her past threatened to overwhelm her. But as her gaze met Ravik's, something shifted. His eyes did not judge. They offered trust, calm, and a strange, unspoken belief in her. That small spark, faint and fragile, ignited into determination. She stepped forward, letting the light within her flow freely. The shadows recoiled but reformed, twisting into new, terrifying shapes. Faces she had never seen before, monstrous and ancient, leered at her with malevolence. One shadow surged forward, larger and darker than the rest, its eyes like black holes pulling at her very essence. Lyra faltered, fear gripping her like iron chains. The darkness whispered, "You are weak. You will fail. You are nothing." But then she remembered Ravik's words, and the warmth of his presence beside her. Strength is courage. Strength is heart. She clenched her fists, focusing on the spark that had first awakened in her, the flicker of light that had drawn Ravik's attention. Her glow expanded, bright and steady, casting away some of the shadows. The dark figure hissed and lunged at her, but Lyra met it head-on. Light clashed against darkness, flaring in dazzling bursts that lit the chamber like lightning. She felt her body, mind, and heart align in a rhythm she had never known. This was no longer about proving herself to others. It was about trusting herself, embracing who she was, and standing unafraid. Ravik's voice guided her, steady and calm amidst the chaos. "You are not your past, Lyra. You are not your failures. Stand and claim your power." Lyra's hands pulsed brighter, and for a moment, the shadow faltered. The figure recoiled, as though struck by a force invisible, yet undeniable. Lyra realized then that the power she had feared all her life had not been absent. It had been hidden, waiting for her courage to awaken it. She took a deep breath and pushed forward, channeling her light into the shadow. It shrieked and twisted, shrinking under her force, until finally, with a blinding burst, it dissolved entirely. The chamber fell silent, the air thick with the residue of magic and exertion. Lyra collapsed to her knees, panting, her hands still glowing faintly. She had faced the shadows, the doubts, the fear, and she had survived. For the first time, she felt not shame, but triumph. Ravik knelt beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You have taken the next step," he said softly. "You are stronger than you realize. The courage within you is rare, and the heart you carry is what will guide your power." Lyra's chest rose and fell, the weight of exhaustion and exhilaration pressing upon her. I did it?" she asked, her voice trembling with awe. "You did," Ravik replied. His eyes softened, and for a brief moment, the commanding Alpha seemed almost human, almost vulnerable. "And there is more to come. The kingdom itself may yet test you, Lyra. But today, you have broken the first of many chains." The days that followed were a mixture of intense training and quiet moments that revealed the depth of the bond between them. Ravik pushed her further, but not cruelly. Each trial was designed to uncover not only her power, but also her courage and heart. Lyra began to trust herself more fully, and she began to notice something else, an unspoken connection growing between them. It was subtle at first. A shared glance lingering too long, a hand brushing against hers, a touch on the shoulder that lingered in her memory long after it was gone. Each moment created a tension that neither could deny, though neither spoke of it openly. During a rare, quiet evening, Ravik led her to the palace gardens. The moon hung low in the sky, casting silver light on the fountain and the marble statues of ancient kings and queens. Lyra inhaled the cool night air, feeling the weight of the day's training lift from her shoulders. "You are changing, Lyra," Ravik said quietly. "Not just in power, but in presence. You are becoming the Omega you were meant to be." Lyra's cheeks flushed. She had never been praised like this before. I am trying," she whispered. "You are more than trying," he said, stepping closer. "You are becoming. And I am here, guiding you. But it is your choice to rise fully. You must claim it for yourself." Her heart raced. There was something in his voice that stirred a longing she could not name, a pull that made her want to be closer, to trust him more completely. But fear lingered at the edges, the fear of failure, the fear of letting someone see her fully. Ravik extended a hand, not commanding, not demanding, but inviting. "Take my hand," he said. "Let me help you face what comes next." Lyra hesitated only for a moment, then reached out. The contact was electric, a tether of warmth and strength that coursed through her. She felt courage she did not know she possessed, and in that moment, the bond between them deepened. Suddenly, a chill swept through the garden. The shadows from the palace seemed to gather at the edges, moving unnaturally, almost sentient. Lyra tensed, sensing that the trials were far from over. "The real danger is not gone," Ravik said, his tone serious now. "The shadows you faced before were only a warning. There is a force older and darker than you can imagine, and it has noticed your awakening. Ravik, Ravik, Ravik." Lyra's hands glowed, steady and bright. She had faced fear before, but this felt different. It was not only her courage being tested, but her ability to trust herself and her bond with Ravik. "We will face it together," he said, his hand firm around hers. "But know this. The choice to rise or fall is ultimately yours." Lyra nodded, a mixture of determination and awe settling over her. She felt a shift within herself, a breaking of invisible chains. For the first time, she believed in her strength, in her power, and in the possibility that she could stand beside Ravik, not as weak Omega, but as someone who belonged in this world of kings, queens, and magic. The palace seemed to respond to her awakening. The air shimmered faintly, and the runes that had once glowed softly now pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. It was as though the kingdom itself recognized her rising power, acknowledging that she was no longer a shadow in the corner of the world. But the calm did not last. From the far end of the garden, a dark figure emerged, tall and menacing. Lyra recognized it from the Chamber of Trials, the alpha rival who had tested her before. He had come again. But this time, the shadows around him were thicker, more alive. His eyes glinted with malice as he stared at her. Ravik stepped in front of her, protective and unwavering. "Do not fear him," he said. "You have power now, but he will test it. He will test you both." Lyra's pulse quickened. The confrontation was inevitable. She had grown stronger, yes, but fear and doubt still lingered. Yet for the first time, she felt ready to face it not alone, but with Ravik beside her, a tether of trust and courage that gave her strength beyond measure. The alpha rival's gaze met hers, and Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. The shadows behind him writhed like living serpents, sensing her awakening power, preparing for a clash that would decide more than just their own fates. Ravik's hand tightened around hers, and Lyra drew a deep breath. She would not falter. She would not hide. She would rise. Cliffhanger. The rival alpha lunged forward, shadows surging like a storm, and Lyra's light flared in response. In that moment, she realized that this was more than a trial. It was the beginning of a war she could not avoid. And as Ravik's presence steadied her, she knew that together, they might stand against the darkness if she could fully embrace the power within her. The palace garden had turned into a storm of shadows and light. The rival alpha surged forward, dark energy rippling around him like a living tide. Lyra's hands glowed with a fierce, steady light, responding to her heartbeat and courage. She had never felt power so alive, so tethered to her own will, and yet, the danger before her tested every ounce of that newfound strength. Ravik stood beside her, his presence both commanding and reassuring. "Remember, Lyra," he said, voice steady amidst the chaos. "You are stronger than you think. Trust yourself. Trust your power. Trust me." Lyra nodded, drawing a deep breath. Her body trembled, her mind focused, and her heart raced. She could feel the pulse of the kingdom around her, the magic of the palace responding to her awakening. Every shadow, every whisper, every heartbeat seemed connected to her own energy. She was no longer just an Omega who had been rejected. She was someone who could command her destiny. The rival Alpha struck first, his dark energy lashing out like a whip. Lyra's light flared, a shield of warmth and power that met him head-on. The force shook the garden, sending leaves and petals swirling into the air. She stumbled but did not fall. She met his gaze, and in that moment, she realized that fear was no longer an enemy. It was a guide, a challenge she could overcome. "You cannot win," the rival sneered, his voice low and sharp. Lyra's heart surged with defiance. "I am not weak," she said, voice trembling but strong. "I am me, and I will rise." Her light flared brighter than ever, expanding outward in a radiant glow that forced the shadows to recoil. The rival Alpha hissed, stepping back, but he was relentless. Shadows swirled around him, twisting and clawing, trying to break through her shield. Ravik moved like a shadow of his own, closing the distance between Lyra and the rival Alpha. His gray eyes burned with intensity. "Stand your ground, Lyra. Channel everything you've learned. This is your moment." Lyra's hands pulsed, her mind clear, her heart steady. She focused on the spark within her, the light that had grown with every trial, every fear she had faced. She imagined herself as she truly was, not the rejected Omega of her past, but a force of courage and power, ready to claim her place in the world. The rival Alpha lunged again, faster and stronger, but Lyra met him head-on. Light clashed with darkness in a dazzling eruption that lit the night sky. The force of their battle rippled through the palace, shaking the marble statues and causing the enchanted runes to flare with brilliance. Lyra's energy surged, feeding off her determination and the bond she shared with Ravik. She could feel his presence steadying her, a tether of strength and trust that allowed her to channel her power fully. Together, they were a force unmatched, light and darkness in a perfect balance. With a final, desperate push, Lyra unleashed her full power. The light expanded, overwhelming the shadows, breaking through the rival Alpha's defenses. The darkness shrieked and dissolved into mist, leaving the chamber and garden bathed in radiant energy. Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. She had faced the ultimate trial, and she had risen. Ravik knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You have done it," he said softly. "You have faced the shadows, embraced your power, and claimed your place. Lyra looked up at him, breathless and trembling. I did it? She whispered. Yes, he replied, his gaze steady and warm. And more than that, you have awakened something greater than even you realized. The kingdom, the magic, the bonds of power, they all recognize you now. You are not just an Omega. You are a force that can shape the future. Lyra's chest rose and fell, filled with a mix of exhaustion, pride, and awe. She had fought not just against the shadows, but against the doubts that had haunted her all her life. She had risen above shame, above fear, and discovered a strength she had never imagined. The garden was quiet now, the storm of shadows dispersed. Moonlight shimmered on the fountain and the marble statues, casting silver light on her and Ravik. For a moment, the world seemed still, as though acknowledging the victory she had achieved. Ravik's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, bridging the space between them. Lyra, he said, voice low, you have grown beyond what I expected. You are no longer the Omega who was rejected and scorned. You are someone I can trust. With everything. Your heart, your courage, your power. Lyra felt a flutter in her chest. She had never imagined anyone would see her like this. Not just her strength, but her soul. Ravik, her words faltered, overwhelmed by the emotions swirling within her. He reached out, taking her hand in his. The touch was electric, warm, and grounding, all at once. You do not need to say anything, he whispered. Your actions, your courage, your heart, they speak louder than words ever could. You have claimed yourself, Lyra, and I am honored to stand with you. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to believe in the possibility of something beyond fear and rejection. She realized that her journey had not just been about power or survival. It had been about discovering her own worth, her own strength, and the courage to trust both herself and another. The palace seemed to respond to this awakening. The runes glowed softly, the air shimmered with residual magic, and the shadows that had lingered at the edges dissipated entirely. Lyra felt a sense of peace she had never known, a quiet triumph, tempered by the knowledge that her power was not just hers alone, but something that could shape the world around her. Ravik's hand remained in hers, a tether of trust and connection. Lyra, he said, voice filled with quiet emotion. The kingdom is vast and full of challenges. But tonight, you have proven that no shadow, no fear, no doubt can hold you down. You are stronger than any who would deny you. And I will always stand by you. Lyra felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had come so far from shame, rejection, and fear to this moment of triumph and trust. The bond she shared with Ravik was no longer just about guidance or training. It was something deeper, something unspoken, yet undeniable. I will stand with you too, she said softly. I am ready for whatever comes next. Ravik smiled faintly, the kind of smile that spoke of quiet pride and unspoken promise. Then together, we will face whatever shadows remain. And no matter what comes, you will not face it alone. As the moonlight bathed the garden in silver, Lyra felt a sense of completion and transformation. The Omega who had once been rejected and scorned had risen, claimed her power, and discovered a strength that even she had not known existed. She was no longer a shadow in the corner of the world. She was a light, fierce, and unyielding, ready to face the kingdom and her destiny alongside the Alpha King who had claimed her. And as the night settled, calm and quiet, the palace seemed to hum with approval, acknowledging the rise of a new force, a new Omega whose courage and heart would shape the days to come. Ending. Lyra and Ravik stood together, hands intertwined, gazing at the horizon. The trials were over, but their journey had only begun. Shadows may return, challenges may rise, but together, they had discovered a bond stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, stronger than the past itself. The Omega had risen, and with her, a new dawn for the kingdom had begun.